legislative auditor and then from the Minnesota Department of Education. We do not take any additional testimony during these hearings. Ms. Randall, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Judy Randall, Legislative Auditor. I want to say thank you for having 2 meetings in 1 week. I know it's been busy, but we do appreciate you having this hearing on our most recent report, which is a special review of the Minnesota Department of Education's oversight of Feeding Our Future. Now, as I'm sure you are all well aware, over the past 2 years, the nonprofit organization Feeding Our Future and scores of its associates have been the subject of federal investigations. As you know, the federal government has alleged that Feeding Our Future was at the center of a scheme intended to defraud federal child nutrition programs. In fact, just last week, the first trial related to those investigations concluded, with 5 of the 7 defendants found guilty by a jury. Rather than further investigate the alleged criminal activity of those individuals, our work focused instead on the state's oversight of Feeding Our Future. More specifically, we focused on the Minnesota Department of Education, MDE, which is the state agency responsible for overseeing child nutrition programs, and it was the state agency responsible for overseeing Feeding Our Future. Now, when bad actors collude with the intent to commit fraud, it can be very difficult to find that fraud, to discover it, and it can be very difficult to stop that fraud. But the best defense against fraud is effective oversight and strong internal controls. Taken together, good oversight and strong controls make it difficult, at least, for bad actors to commit fraud. And that's why at OLA we focus so much attention on those controls and those oversight processes, because again, they are the best defense mechanisms state agencies have to ensure that public funds are being used as intended and to protect against fraud. Now, bad actors will look for gaps in oversight, they'll try to identify loopholes, they'll try to find opportunities to commit fraud, and it is the responsibility of state agencies to limit those opportunities. As you will hear from Ms. Tyson, our Director of Special Reviews, we found that the Minnesota Department of Education provided inadequate oversight of Feeding Our Future. You will hear several examples of instances, including times from before 2020 and from before the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, where MDE provided inadequate oversight and created opportunities for Feeding Our Future to commit fraud. Time and time again, throughout the 4 years that it participated in the child nutrition programs, MDE missed opportunities to hold Feeding Our Future accountable. To hear more about those missed opportunities, our findings, and our recommendations, I would like to now turn to Ms. Tyson to present our key points. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Tyson. Before you start, I would note that Senator Dibble and Senator Barr are online. This is a hybrid meeting. We anticipate other members will be joining us as well. So welcome, Ms. Tyson, and state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Catherine Tyson. I'm OLA's Director of Special Reviews. I'm here today with my team, Lucas Lockhart and Libby Wallace, to present findings and recommendations related to our review, Minnesota Department of Education, Oversight of Feeding Our Future. Between September 2022 and February 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice charged 70 individuals with various financial crimes related to their suspected roles in a $250 million fraud scheme. The defendants allegedly exploited 2 federally funded nutrition programs during the COVID-19 pandemic, and according to the federal government, the scheme centered around a Minnesota nonprofit organization, Feeding Our Future. Until early 2022, Feeding Our Future was a sponsor for 2 federal nutrition programs, the Child and Adult Care Food Program, or CACFP, and the Summer Food Service Program, or SFSP. CACFP provides reimbursements for meals and snacks served to eligible children and adults enrolled at participating child care centers, after-school care programs, and adult daycare centers, among other locations, and CACFP generally operates year-round. SFSP provides reimbursements for meals and snacks served to eligible children and teens at locations like summer camps that are in low-income areas. And SFSP operates when school is not in session, like during the summer months or during unexpected school closures. In CACFP and SFSP, Food is served to eligible children and adults at locations called sites. Sites are responsible for verifying the eligibility of the participants, for serving the meals and snacks, as well as counting meals and snacks served. CACFP and SFSP sites may prepare the food themselves or contract with outside vendors to provide those meals and snacks. Sponsors are responsible for overseeing sites. They monitor their sites for compliance with program requirements, train their site staff, receive the site's reimbursement claims, and then distribute the reimbursements, among other things. Sponsors retain a percentage of those reimbursements to cover the costs of facilitating food service, as well as ensuring compliance with federal program requirements. State agencies, in turn, oversee sponsors. They do this through ongoing monitoring, training, and technical assistance. And state agencies are responsible for reviewing and approving claims for reimbursement. Then they make payments to sponsors for valid claims. The United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA, is responsible for overseeing state agencies' administration of CACFP and SFSP. They're responsible for reimbursing state agencies for valid claims and also writing rules, federal rules for the programs, and for evaluating state agency performance. We concluded that MDE's oversight of Feeding Our Future was inadequate. Frankly, we think its inadequate oversight created opportunities for fraud. In our review, we identified numerous instances when MDE did not provide adequate oversight, especially information it either had in its possession or should have obtained but did not. These instances span all of MDE's key oversight responsibilities, and they also span the nearly 4 years, 2018 through 2022, during which Feeding Our Future received public funds to administer nutrition programs. Today, I'm going to be presenting select findings related to 3 key themes. First, that MDE failed to act on warning signs known to the department prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Second, that MDE did not effectively exercise its authority to hold Feeding Our Future accountable to program requirements. And third, that MDE was ill-prepared to respond to the issues it encountered with Feeding Our Future. So let's talk about this first theme. Feeding Our Future began operating in CACFP in August of 2018, and then in June 2020, it began operating in SFSP. As the chart on the screen shows, between 2018 and 2021, Feeding Our Future grew at a significant rate. At its peak, MDE paid Feeding Our Future nearly $32 million for nearly 12 million meals and snacks served in April 2021 alone. This was 87 times more than what MDE paid Feeding Our Future in April 2020. Compared to other sponsors, Feeding Our Future was an outlier both before and after the start of the pandemic, in both the number of sites under its sponsorship as well as the amount of reimbursements it received. By October of 2019, Feeding Our Future already had more than 6 times the number of CACFP sites than the average multi-site sponsor. At this time, Feeding Our Future had 73 CACFP sites, while the average multi-site sponsor had 12. Then, due to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the amount of federal funds MDE distributed to all CACFP and SFSP sponsors increased by about 400% from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. However, the total funds that Feeding Our Future received in this time period increased by roughly 2,800%. Then at fiscal year 2021, roughly 4 out of every $10 distributed to CACFP and SFSP sponsors went to Feeding Our Future. On top of all of this, by the start of the pandemic, MDE had reason to be concerned about Feeding Our Future's compliance with program requirements. In December of 2018, MDE conducted an in-depth administrative review of Feeding Our Future's CACFP operations. Many of MDE's findings, which we describe in Exhibit 3.3 on pages 38 through 40 of the report, relate to issues that increase the risk for fraud. For example, MDE found that one or more of its 4 sites in the review included or had incorrectly inflated average daily attendance, and they had claimed unallowable food service expenses, among other things. In addition to findings related to Feeding Our Future sites, MDE cited deficiencies in Feeding Our Future's ability to manage a CACFP program. For example, MDE found that Feeding Our Future had failed to ensure that sites under its sponsorship took actions that Feeding Our Future itself had identified during monitoring visits, and then improperly verified meal claims from those sites. While a follow-up review would have been warranted in this case, MDE never conducted one. In fact, MDE told Feeding Our Future it would conduct one by November of 2019, yet it did not occur. Moving to our second theme. Despite signs that Feeding Our Future might not be in full compliance with program requirements, MDE did not effectively exercise its authority to hold Feeding Our Future accountable to program requirements, both before and after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's first touch on some of MDE's key oversight responsibilities. 2 key activities, which I have listed on the screen, occur on a regular schedule, and these are application reviews and administrative reviews. In Minnesota, sponsors apply annually to participate in CACFP and SFSP, and MDE uses information from that application to determine eligibility, the reasonability of the organization's budget, as well as the capability of sponsors to meet financial and operational standards, which are outlined in federal regulations. Administrative reviews involve periodic, in-depth monitoring of sponsors. They include visits to a percentage of a sponsor's sites, they include observations of meals and snack service, and they include reviews of the sponsor's records, like meal claim records or financial records, and documentation of the sponsor's monitoring efforts. Another key area of oversight is investigating complaints and irregularities in these 2 programs. Federal law requires MDE to do these investigations, and when it identifies irregularities, to take appropriate action to correct them. And finally, MDE must initiate an administrative serious deficiency process when it identifies serious issues with the sponsor's operations. Serious deficiencies can include things like submitting false information on an application, failing to properly monitor sites, claiming reimbursements for meals and snacks that are not served to participants, and many other things. Sponsors must correct these deficiencies that MDE identifies, and if they do not, MDE must terminate the sponsor's participation in the program. We found that MDE repeatedly approved Feeding Our Future's annual applications despite identifying serious concerns about the organization's ability to administer CACFP and SFSP. We also found that MDE did not appropriately investigate complaints involving Feeding Our Future or its sites. We also found that MDE did not verify information it received prior to approving annual applications, closing investigations, or deferring serious deficiencies. In the following several slides, I'll be providing examples from each of these 3 findings. Federal regulations require MDE to deny sponsors' applications if they do not meet certain performance standards. And MDE missed opportunities to hold Feeding Our Future accountable to these standards when it approved several applications. One of the applications we believe MDE could have denied was Feeding Our Future's sponsor application for the 2021 CACFP program year, which MDE approved in October of 2020. As Exhibit 3.1 on pages 26 through 27 show, MDE raised a number of concerns when reviewing this application, many of which pertain directly to the extent to which Feeding Our Future met CACFP performance standards. For example, MDE noted that the organization's application did not adequately document financial internal controls. MDE also found that Feeding Our Future did not have a dedicated financial or accounting staff person. At this time, this was a repeat concern, and one that we think is reasonable given the size of Feeding Our Future's operations at this moment in time. In its application review, MDE noted that the lack of financial staff undermined Feeding Our Future's internal controls related to fiscal integrity and prevented a reasonable separation of duties for an organization of its size. Prior to approving the application, MDE requested information on how Feeding Our Future managed its finances and its internal controls. Feeding Our Future did not provide this information to MDE, and MDE approved the application anyway. Moving to our findings related to complaint investigations. I mentioned earlier that federal regulations require MDE to promptly investigate complaints received or irregularities noted in connection with CACFP and SFSP and take appropriate action to correct any irregularities. Between June 2018 and December 2021, MDE received at least 30 complaints, including allegations that Feeding Our Future used unethical or inappropriate methods to recruit sites, operated sites at location without the property owner's permission, that at some of its sites it operated messy or haphazard food distribution processes, that at some of its sites it was not providing food, and including 2 allegations of kickback payments, or Feeding Our Future demanding kickback payments, rather, from its vendors to serve food at its sites. However, we found MDE did not investigate some complaints about Feeding Our Future despite their frequency or seriousness. And when MDE decided to investigate complaints about Feeding Our Future at sites, its investigations were inadequate. We also found that MDE inappropriately asked Feeding Our Future to investigate complaints about itself. In August of 2021, MDE received conflicting reports of inappropriate or illegal behavior by Feeding Our Future, a site, and a vendor. Specifically, one of Feeding Our Future's sites contacted MDE alleging that Feeding Our Future had not paid its food vendor. The vendor in turn told MDE that Feeding Our Future had demanded a kickback, and when the vendor refused to pay, Feeding Our Future canceled the vendor's contract in retaliation. The site then said that the new vendor that Feeding Our Future had assigned it delivered too few meals, and the meals that it did deliver violated food safety and dietary requirements. In separate correspondence with MDE, Feeding Our Future said that it itself wanted to take administrative action against the site involved in this complaint for submitting fraudulent claims, soliciting a kickback from its former vendor, and making a false complaint to MDE about the new vendor, among other serious allegations. But rather than initiating a full independent investigation into Feeding Our Future or the sites and vendors involved, MDE referred the site and the site's original vendor's complaint back to Feeding Our Future for resolution. We did not see any evidence that MDE took any independent investigatory steps, like reviewing records or visiting the sites, to ensure kids were fed and that the food was nutritious and safe. This one is particularly notable because the U.S. Department of Justice later charged the executive director of Feeding Our Future, the executive director of the organization operating the site, and the owner of both vendors named in the complaint in the alleged fraud scheme. And the site operator, in fact, pleaded guilty to criminal wire fraud charges in January of this year. MDE declared Feeding Our Future seriously deficient on 2 occasions. First, in January of 2021, due to the IRS's revocation of Feeding Our Future's nonprofit status, as well as Feeding Our Future's noncompliance with federal audit requirements. MDE again found Feeding Our Future seriously deficient in March of 2021 related to those 2 issues, as well as larger concerns about the ability of Feeding Our Future to meet federal performance standards. By June of 2021, MDE deferred all serious deficiencies. However, MDE did not take reasonable steps to ensure the organization had implemented corrective actions. For example, MDE discontinued a process to terminate Feeding Our Future as a sponsor in CACFP in May of 2021 because the organization submitted an audit of its use of federal funds. Had MDE reviewed audit documentation, which it had the authority under federal law to do, it would have likely discovered that the auditor did not meet basic requirements. In fact, the Minnesota Board of Accountancy has now sanctioned the auditor who conducted this audit for being a threat to the public. As a second example, documents that MDE collected from Feeding Our Future to validate meal claims while it was seriously deficient contained indications of the alleged fraud. But MDE approved all of these meal claims without investigating irregularities. For example, in the files that we reviewed, we saw attendance records that showed significantly more or fewer kids in attendance than the meals claimed. For example, I remember one file that showed meals served to 2,000 kids, but the attendance records said only 1,000. We saw inappropriate ages of children based on the classroom that they were assigned, like a 13-year-old in an infant classroom. We saw menus that did not show the food that the site served. But as I said, MDE did not disallow those claims or adjust them downward. Finally, we concluded that the findings in our report are symptoms of a department that was ill-prepared to respond to the issues it encountered with Feeding Our Future. When we questioned its oversight of Feeding Our Future, MDE officials told us many things prevented the department from acting on its concerns about Feeding Our Future, including operational challenges caused by COVID-19 pandemic-related waivers, a lack of clear written guidance from USDA, and a lack of rulemaking authority under state law. But to these points, we concluded that it was MDE's choices that made the federal COVID-19 pandemic-era waivers a source of reduced oversight, not the waivers themselves. We think that the flexibility the waivers gave MDE in terms of when and how it monitored program participants should have made it easier and not harder to focus on high-risk sponsors. We also concluded that MDE had the authority to take the steps it needed to related to Feeding Our Future, regardless of a lack of detail in law or USDA guidance. And to the extent to which MDE believed that additional regulatory authority would have strengthened its ability to take these actions, MDE has an obligation to seek legislative action to obtain that authority. The Minnesota Court of Appeals put MDE on notice all the way back in 2017 that it needed to codify certain procedures in state administrative rules, but MDE neither pursued rulemaking authority or requested changes to statutes. As you can imagine, we have a number of recommendations listed on page 77 of our report, and one recommendation to the legislature. We recommend that the legislature either establish criteria in statute or give MDE the authority to conduct rulemaking to establish application criteria it must consider when reviewing sponsors' applications. I'll note here that the 2023 legislature established some criteria, but these criteria relate to only one of 3 CACFP performance standards, so there's still room for improvement. We also recommend that MDE take additional steps to verify information sponsors provide in support of sponsor applications and in response to corrective action plans resulting from those administrative reviews or from serious deficiency processes. And we also say that MDE should target these steps to high-risk sponsors. We recommend that MDE place greater emphasis on program integrity and risk-based monitoring if oversight requirements are waived again in the future. And related to complaints, we recommend that MDE revise its complaint investigation procedures, prioritize independent fact-finding, limit the information it shares with the subject of complaint, and also evaluate recent statutory changes related to its investigatory authority. With that, Mr. Chair, I have concluded my remarks, and I'd be happy to take questions.
Thank you, and I would note that Senator Rest has joined us, as well as Senator Raskowski and Representative Greenman online. Members, any questions? Representative Anderson.
Thank you. I'm trying to figure out exactly when this started. It seems like it went up all the way back to 2018. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Ms. Thiessen.
Mr. Chair and members, in Appendix A of our report, we outline a timeline of key events, and you'll see Feeding Our Future was established way back in 2016, and then in the spring of 2017, applied to become a sponsor for CACFP. It eventually gained approval later in 2017, but remained dormant until 2018 when it began claiming, requesting claims for reimbursement in CACFP.
Thank you.
Representative Anderson.
I'm trying to figure out the timeline. So Eventually, it looks like the Department of Ed referred this to the USDA in 2020. In 2021, April, they referred it to the FBI. And I know that in July of '21, Assistant Commissioner Darren Cortes said under oath that he has no reason to suspect fraud. That was in July of '21. When exactly, what did the department know that there was suspected fraud?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair and members, the department has told us that pretty early in the summer of 2020, it began having some suspicions. And that is correct, that in October or November of 2020, MDE referred some concerns to the USDA Office of Inspector General. However, we don't have evidence of that first kind of contact with FBI. In fact, we actually have an email from February of 2021 from the FBI to MDE asking if it has concerns or complaints or had received complaints regarding Feeding Our Future's executive director. But then we know through court filings that by April of 2021, there was a connection between MDE and FBI.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you. So long before the July 21 statement by the Assistant Commissioner that there was no reason to suspect fraud, which is done under oath, by the way, there was suspected fraud, and MDE had been doing, at least knew about it, not doing anything hardly, right? Is that correct?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair and members, I can't speak to exactly what was going through Assistant Commissioner Cortes' mind at that moment, but it does seem to us that there was at least enough suspicion to start raising concerns with federal entities.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you. I'll leave my comments for a little later, but it's just, I have to say, this is just shocking to me, because clearly the department knew, clearly the leadership, the appointed commissioners and assistant commissioners, and I know we have a new commissioner at MDE now, but clearly they knew about this for years. And they knew about it long before the vast majority of these dollars were sent out to fraudulent organizations. And they did nothing or virtually nothing about it. In fact, they actually threw the whistleblowers under the bus, because the people that were making the complaints, the 30 complaints, they actually sent them to Feeding Our Future and said, hey, you deal with this, right? And Feeding Our Future took away their contracts because they wouldn't pay kickbacks. That's what happened here. It's just incredible. And the department knew about it. They knew about it, and they did nothing. And they could have stopped this long before there were $250+ million in fraudulent claims sent out to these folks. This could have all been avoided. And as you know, I've served as a commissioner. I served as a state auditor. And I'm back as a legislator. I'm freshman legislator. But the difference, I mean, this would have never happened in the past under any administration. This, and 1/10 of this wouldn't have happened and didn't happen. And so it's just shocking. And the pandemic is not an excuse. None of that, there's no excuse for this. None, except pure incompetence or purposely turning a blind eye on this. It's purpose. It's got to be purposely done. And I don't know what to say. For the taxpayers, for the kids that should have gotten fed also, but for the taxpayers in the state, this is just awful. It's awful. So I will leave it at that. Thank you, and thank you for your work. Thank you.
Ms. Randall, just because there was just an allegation of purposeful intent, did you find any evidence of purposeful intent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. We did not see any indication of direction to continue paying them. We did not see indication of we did not see indication of purposeful intent. What we did see is that they were ill-prepared to handle the situation. One thing I will just comment on, because now this is the second report this week that's had concerning problems at state agencies. I've been thinking about it a lot this week, as you can imagine, and trying to think about what common themes there are here. And I think one of the themes is that certainly at the Department of Education, possibly at Dolly, the state agencies don't necessarily approach their work with an oversight and a regulatory mindset. At Department of Education in particular, I think they look to work with their programs. They look to work with school districts. They look to work with their grantees. We've seen this with, grants reports that we've done. They don't have or we haven't seen evidence of the skill set that is needed, the not trusting people, right? I mean, if they do have that skill set, we want them at OLA because we're skeptical, right? But managing this type of program, overseeing this type of money, whether it's this, whether it's the frontline worker pay, whether it's whatever we're asking state agencies to do, there is certainly a place for the technical assistance and the working with and the helping. But then there's also a place for folks who are skeptical, who say, wait, we want to trust you, but we need to verify. We need that information. We need to double check. We need to do that oversight. And I think one of our conclusions is that the folks who were getting these complaints, the folks who were being faced with the issues that Feeding Our Future presented, were not the folks with that regulatory mindset. They were the nutrition program staff, right, who were used to working with folks who cooperated. And so part of our, one of our main findings related to them being ill-prepared was, I think, maybe we all in Minnesota were naive that there aren't bad actors. I mean, this certainly has woken us up. So I guess that was a really long-winded ramble there, just kind of some deep thoughts by Judy Randall. But I think we didn't see evidence of intentional looking the other way. But what we did see evidence was an agency that was not prepared to understand what they were seeing and then take action.
And Ms. Randall, as a follow-up, in the report you mentioned the value of creating the Inspector General. Do we essentially need that in every agency?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Certainly at a department like MDE, they need an Office of Inspector General. They didn't have their own general counsel office until fall of January of 22. This is why Ms. Tyson is here. She's the expert. So MDE, a pretty big agency, didn't have its own general counsel on staff until January of 22, and now has the OIG. And I think it's a really important tool because hopefully they have the staff who do take that regulatory oversight in mind, that regulatory approach. Does every agency need an OIG? I don't think we can afford one. I don't know that would be the priorities for the legislature. But some of these larger agencies that have these types of programs where we're spending a lot of money out in the communities and trusting people, I think we need to think about the skills we need in place at the agencies.
Thank you. And sorry for jumping in there, Representative Anderson. We have Representative Quam, Senator Cran, and then Senator Drazkowski. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And from your last comments, rank and competency is sort of what I would classify it as. And the idea of having a ombudsperson for this is a large portion of our state budget. And it gets large amounts of federal dollars. And with the federal dollars and state dollars, there's a great amount of funding for administrative and oversight activities. In fact, the federal dollars require there be specific oversight documentation and procedures followed with those federal dollars. I'm just curious, how many total meals during this period and from the program were there funded through Feeding Our Future?
Auditor Randall or Director Tyson?
Mr. Chair, Representative Quam, I don't have a number at my fingertips, but I could provide one after the hearing. I do have one count in my mind, however, is in April of 2021. In that month alone, Feeding Our Future claimed to have served nearly 12 million meals just in that single 1 month.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you do get that total number of meals, I'd love to see the total number of paid-for meals that never happened and the breakdown of the meals that were found to be not up to standards with quality, health, and et cetera, because that will help us understand the proportionality of ineffectiveness happen in the program. Because, this is going back, quite a few years, when I'm looking through the documentation, beginning of or early 2019, the complaints started coming in, way pre-pandemic. And then April through August of 2019, there was a review and meeting and attention from MDE on this. However, I'm not seeing any evidence that there was an improved quality and oversight. So when we start talking about, 2021, this is at least 2 years prior to when it finally got so bad that it could not be ignored. And having been on the, part of this committee for a long time, or this group, I remember years before the Feeding Our Future issue, there were issues with some child care programs. And I have noticed that there is a continuation of entities that participated in that fraud and then participated in this fraud. When you've done the audits of different groups and that, what evidence of after they had that first large fraud with the child care, of new policies, procedures, and communication across agencies, departments, and groups to help prevent? Because, and when I've been involved in the real world, we actually, when something happened, we had a post-mortem meeting. We decided these are the things that went wrong. Then we decided how could we have prevented those. We come up with policies and procedures, and then we implemented. Have you found or seen any evidence that this activity went on, and then was there an issue with actually implementing, or did they just not come up with it, or did they not implement?
Mr. Chair, Representative Quam, I think to the first point, just to give you a couple more data points. So if you can recall, the federal government, the Department of Justice has alleged that $250 million have been misappropriated from these two programs. In fiscal years 2021 and 2022 combined, MDE distributed approximately $655 million. Just a reminder that that $250 million of potential fraud that the federal government has identified would be kind of in that same time period, roughly.
Mr. Chair, Representative Quam, to your question about whether agencies updated their policies and shared information and improved practices since our prior special review on childcare, what we tend to see is that state government is pretty siloed, and I don't think that will surprise you. And so while in DHS there may have been an improvement in their policies and their oversight, it's not a foregone conclusion that those new practices and those heightened oversight and policies would then get disseminated across the whole enterprise of state government. Things tend to be siloed, honestly, not just within an agency, but within a department or a program within an agency. And so we saw no evidence of updated policies from the childcare concerns then implemented here. And then one other thing I'll just say in terms of some basic numbers and background information to the beginning part of your question. On page 14 and 15, we do provide some background information in general on Feeding Our Future claims and reimbursements and meals.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think we should add to the legislative things or suggestions would be coming up with a way of improving that. If you see fraud, that flag should authorize the sharing of data across groups and entities, and if we have to spell it out legislatively because they're not capable of implementing it, I hope the members of this committee work together to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, could I say something in
Auditor
response to
Randall?
that?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Quam. I will note that all state employees are required under 2 different sections of law to report fraud, known fraud, to the Office of the Legislative Auditor. And we have that ability to, not that we shouldn't share ability for people to coordinate when there's fraud. I don't want to have a monopoly on that. But I will just say that they are supposed to report it to OLA, and then in theory, we would have that ability to then follow that information and help other agencies prevent future fraud.
I just would note we have 4 people on the list. I expect there will be more. So we want to be, if you have questions for the auditor on the auditor's focus, and if we have questions for MDE, we can wait for MDE. So Senator Cran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Auditor Randall. My questioning was going to start off, of course, with a statement of just so everybody knows that your review, although comprehensive, and I know it's been part of your life, based on the ability for Director Thiessen to recite it as a second appendage or another appendage is extraordinary. And so, but just so everybody knows, this report is solely and very limited in its view of the entire food program to just MDE holistically, and as it relates to feeding our future. And I think overall, many people have looked at the feeding our future as kind of coined as a term of it being the fraud, while it being one element of this food program. And so, there's much more to do. And so based on your discoveries, and so everybody understands, there's so much more for us as the Legislative Audit Commission, as well as our responsibility as legislators, to understand that they have a lot more work to do based on there's still an open investigation with the FBI that leads to new and unbelievable discoveries every week. And so they have to be and will be championed with not only the additional recommendations or leads of information that they're providing based on their investigation, but as a result of, I think, public reporting from one of the newspapers and what's been found in the FBI investigation, that 50% of the people that are currently charged are current vendors of the state of Minnesota, almost exclusively in the Department of Health and Human Services arena. And so it's incumbent upon the legislative auditor to go out and find what are the operational aspects that we need to fine tune or to make sure that those entities are also have great oversight and are in compliance, and to bring assurance that this doesn't carry over, or that any level of fraud is carried over into that arena as well. So just so everybody understands, I think we're at the 50-yard line of the work necessary to really get all of the information we need as this commission and the legislature. And then I will take, and I don't often do it, but take issue with Auditor Randall on the OIG question, and not just the auditor, but I do think that Inspector General's office hasn't, I just have disagreements, and everybody knows. We have open thought and great discussion here. But I really think that we're at a point today with what we've seen just in the last week, what we've continued to see in the daycare, that the OIG being embedded within an agency that it's providing licensing and oversight, it's not working. And so I don't think that that's the solution. I think we're going to have to figure out as this commission and as legislators to figure out how we build an independent office of identification, investigation, prosecution, right? All of those things that maybe mirrors something similar to the Legislative Audit Commission. and the legislative audit with clear delineation, and then that they can't be redirected by an executive body to willfully not prosecute or pursue things that we've seen happen across the agencies. It's not exclusive to this particular issue before us today. So I think that's really the work, because we need somebody independent that has the law enforcement capabilities baked in, and we've got great precedents. We have the OIG in Department of Human Services when that child care issue came up. We embedded 2 BCA officers in there, and the average person doesn't know that they hadn't had a referral for 2 years at the same time. So I don't see the OIG being a solution to it. We have to come up with something else that's fully independent of the executive body and all agencies to do a really effective job and to get the type of work we need to ensure every dollar goes to exactly its intended purpose. So just so everybody understands, we got a lot of work to do on all aspects. The legislative audit, we're going to need support, because even in this report, I think from what I can understand, they were limited on resources, in time, in the ability to take and go down all the paths necessary to even do a better job than they have today. And so we need to be cognizant of that as we move forward, because they still have a lot of work. And so we're going to have to set priorities or help figure out how they get the resources to finish what is the unknown, what is the known portion today and yet to come. So they're kind of on hold here in the waiting room as this investigation continues, because it's not closed. So with that, we talked about the notification. So, Ms. Randall, could you tell us when the Office of the Legislative Auditor was notified of this suspected fraud?
Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Curran. We learned about it when it was in the newspaper in January 22.
Thank you.
Senator Curran.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. And so, in my recollection, that's 2 years after the first suspected fraud occurred?
Auditor Randall.
Mr. Chair, Senator Curran, I don't know the timing of the first suspected fraud, but I can tell you that it was certainly after the Department of Education had reason to suspect fraud.
Senator Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Auditor Randall, it's my understanding, though, anybody who is a state employee, regardless of level, executive body or otherwise, is by law, statutory authority, criminal statutory authority, to report that, to report it. Every single person who knew about it and was aware of it in any way, regardless of the level of suspected fraud, by law is required to report it. Is that true?
Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Curran. Yes, it's true. 609.456 subdivision 2 requires all employees who know about it to report it to OLA. And then also in our own section of law is a requirement for chief executive, chief financial folks to report any known or suspected fraud to OLA.
Senator Curran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Randall. And so with the, I believe in the report, Ms. Thiessen said that the agency, and I think the governor, the original response to when notification or why notification wasn't provided to your office was because they had notified the FBI. And so it appears in the report that the FBI actually notified Department of Education, and one of your exhibits shows that, and no other proof has been provided to dissuade your findings. Is that correct?
Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Curran. Yes, the evidence that we have seen is that the FBI reached out to MDE first. We didn't have any documentation to support MDE initiating with FBI.
Thank you.
Senator Curran.
And there, even if MDE had reported to the FBI, it doesn't absolve them from reporting to the Office of the Legislative Auditor. Thank you. So with the other piece, I think, Ms. Thiessen, you said that when Representative Quam asked about the total dollar amount, and we had a conversation about it yesterday, you said $655 million. We know this supports some of our public entities, our public schools, and so of the total dollars spent, the delineation that was for our public school infrastructure versus our nonprofit. Do you have that number today?
Director Thiessen.
Mr. Chair, Senator Curran, I have that number for SFSP. In the 2021 program year, there were 467 public sponsors and 155 private nonprofit sponsors.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Thiessen, what was the total dollar amount between each of the programs?
Director Tyson.
In, Mr. Chair, Senator Curran, in that year, let's see, I'm doing math in my head about when the program year and the fiscal year match up, but let's just say fiscal year 21 for that SFSP program, the total statewide expenditures is $193 million.
So that was the
Senator
nonprofit side?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Cran, that was the total expenditure in that
Total.
fiscal year.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm just trying to figure out what of the allocation of, and if we don't know it today, that's fine, Ms. Thiessen, it is something we need for the future. And so what I want to know is, of the total dollars spent, what was allocated to our public entities and versus the nonprofit? We've heard the number of $250 million is stolen based on the original 50 people who were charged under the Feeding Our Future criminal umbrella or investigation, but they've since added 20 additional charges. And so we don't really know what that number is. And so I'm trying to figure out what portion of the fraud, which MDE has said that they've acted early and prevented of Feeding Our Future, were they 90% of all of the dollars that were allocated to the nonprofit side versus everybody looks at, well, they're only 50%. $250 million, still a huge dollar amount, but that's what I'm looking for. So with that,
And just Director Tyson and Auditor Randall, if you're unable to calculate that on the go, we can receive that later.
I have one question.
Final question, Senator Grant.
So, Ms. Thiessen, in the waivers because of the pandemic and all of the issues that have been highlighted about why things aren't done, did the waiver ever absolve the agency or remove the capabilities to provide oversight to ensure this fraud didn't occur?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Cran, no, the waivers related to monitoring of sponsors generally adjusted when and how that monitoring had occurred, but they never prevented certain things like site visits or desk audits. I mean, they encouraged off-site visits, but they never prevented them.
Thank you.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Thiessen and Auditor Randall. Minnesotans need to be livid at what we're hearing today, and I'm certain that they are. Director Thiessen, you mentioned at one point that MDE received a billing for 2,000 meals or 2,000 people and only had 1,000 names to support it. Did the check get paid for the 2,000 people instead of the 1,000 people?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, yes, that bill was claimed in full, or paid in full, excuse me.
Senator Drazkowski.
So, Mr. Chair, Director Thiessen, so wouldn't the department, or at least individuals in the department at that point, have known that there was evidence to support 1,000 and they paid 2,000? Is that not prima facie fraud right there in front of the face of a government employee?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, I'll point you to pages 73 through 75 of our report where we describe the contents of the meal validation documents that MDE collected from Feeding Our Future in the spring of 2021. And, as we say in the report, there is a time in June of 2021 where MDE follows up about some of these concerns, some of the concerns that we identified, but not all of them. And it requested additional documentation from Feeding Our Future stating that it, and I quote, will disallow claims missing documentation if not received by June 18th, 2021, end quote. But according to MDE officials, Feeding Our Future did not respond to the department's request. So despite its threat to disallow claims, it did not.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director. Members, an individual within our government reviewed data like this in these bills that came forward. And if there was information to support 1,000 and the department wrote the check for 2,000, what is that saying about the department, whether they knew there was fraud or not? They were, in this case, if that's the case, it appears they were supporting fraud. Mr. Chair, Director Randall, Auditor Randall and Director Thiessen, could you outline for us what the training requirements are for the individuals within the Department of Education that were responsible for overseeing this program, the Feeding Our Future sponsor, if you will, and even the rest of the program, if you like. But how many employees had to go through the training that included the components that outlined the requirements that that Auditor Randall mentioned earlier, that fraud be reported, and what the consequences are to the individual government employees if they pay out when they know there's fraud going on?
Director Randall.
Thank you, Mr.
Auditor
Chair.
Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Drazkowski. My understanding is that there are about 15 FTE in MDE that support the oversight of this program. I think the department would be best equipped to answer the training that they provide those staff. That is not something that we have at our fingertips. Whether or not they paid a claim for 2,000 meals when there was only evidence of 1,000, whether that's fraud or not, I don't think we can say. And, you know, fraud has a very specific definition and meaning, and really it's the courts that can determine whether or not fraud existed. At the very least, we can say that that they were not doing their performing their responsibility. Whether or not it was fraud, I don't know that I would be comfortable saying that. But again, I think the department should best answer the questions about training.
Senator Drazkowski.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Auditor Randall. You know, if the government is selling tires and the bill for the tire is $100 when the actual cost is $50, somebody's getting blatantly ripped off. And that's what we have going on here. And I think we go to all kinds of ends to make certain that we don't overgeneralize or convict somebody. But at some point, we've got to call out wrong when we see it. And this is obviously what we're seeing going on here. One last question, Mr. Chair.
Last question, Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Director and Auditor. Are you aware, is the FBI doing any criminal investigations within the Minnesota Department of Education? Or are there any criminal investigations that you're aware of that are either going on now, have been going on, or maybe going on in the future within the Minnesota Department of Education regarding this?
Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Drazkowski. That's not something we can comment on.
Senator Rest, to this line of questioning, you had asked to jump in? Or was it on a different matter?
No, it's on the report. Yeah, no. I'm at the end. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. The size, scale, and scope of this is just unbelievable, just simply remarkable. And thank you for your work and dedication on this, and I think you hear quite a bit of anger from the voices here. It's not directed at you, but plenty of reason to be angry. But the poor taxpayers of Minnesota. Coming from county government, the double standard that I see here in the Department of Human Services, we've got 8,400 state employees overseeing 8,700 county employees, and I used to wonder why there was so much distrust and so much oversight. And now I understand it's because the state internally sees how it operates, and I'm very concerned that these types of things aren't happening elsewhere or happening at a deeper scale in other tentacles of government. But my question for you is, this is definitely going to be a question for the Department of Education, but in your recommendations, you didn't really talk about where the restitution should come for. And do you see the Department of Education restitutions, should that come out of their budget? Who's on the hook for this?
Auditor Randall, Director Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Jacob. My understanding is that is something that is yet to be determined once the trials are done and once the federal government has weighed in. It'll be a decision for the federal government.
Representative Jacob.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this. And I think, I've not had a chance to finish the whole 120-page, but know you guys have been working on it for a long time. And know at the end of the day, what we're talking about is resources those to go to kids, to feeding kids. And so I appreciate the seriousness with which you took it. I do have one question, but I just wanted to, I was sort of surprised to hear a comparison between this audit and the one we heard on Tuesday, partially because I think when I started reading this one, it felt like it stood in contrast from the 7-month program, but also because what that showed was, I think there were 140 applications, if my memory is serving me right, that had fraud indicators out of millions. And so I followed up with the DLI afterwards because they had talked about their own fraud indicator or their own fraud protections, which I don't think made it in your report. I'm not sure if you asked about it. But what they said was there were 28,000 applications that they denied because they determined to be fraudulent. There were 52,000 applications that were they denied because of identification and inappropriately concerned about inappropriately paying. And so from that audit, what I saw was, I know that there was some question, which I think we disagree on, about the eligibility, but that wasn't a fraud issue. I saw on the fraud question, actually, the kind of tools that we want to see programs using. Now, when we talk about this issue, this isn't a one-time program. This is the place where you want to see the infrastructure really built up for long and sustaining oversight and built into each and every piece of this. And I'm wondering, because the legislature has taken action since we've all been sort of struggling with this, and I'm wondering if you have thoughts or observations or recommendations from the Office of Inspector General that was added to MDE, and then the additional pieces that the tools we've added. As you think about legislative recommendations, do you have thoughts on what has been implemented based on your findings, and thoughts on if there are what other specific tools from a legislative perspective as we think about a state agency managing federal grants to thousands and thousands of different folks?
Director Tyson or Auditor Randall?
Mr. Chair, Representative Greenman, yes, that is correct. In just less than a month ago, the legislature passed a bill and the governor signed into law giving additional investigatory authority to the Department of Education's Office of Inspector General. frankly, one draft, we had a recommendation to the legislature, and then it was taken care of, and our recommendation is now to MDE to evaluate these recent statutory changes and then promptly propose any changes if there are gaps that exist.
Representative Greenman.
Thank you. I really appreciate that because I think that there's an iterativeness that happens as the time that you all take to do the audits that you need, and in the same time, I think are trying to look and make sure that we can act with speed, especially on something like this as we see it. I think that you will see sort of concern across the legislature and across the government for this fraud and how it happened, and now we're sort of seeing some of the details play out in court. I would, as you get a chance to, and as MDE gets a chance to look at these pieces, I would be interested in your feedback, whether they're sort of responding to the things that you found. So thank you for that.
Senator Rest.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not listed as a page number, but on it would be page 77. It is the whole list of your recommendations. I have read through those, and I've also tried to see with the response from the Commissioner of Education to the report, which of these recommendations do you find that the Commissioner of Education endorses, and which of them, often when we get an evaluation, this is a special review, it's a bit different, but when we get an evaluation, the recommendations are listed one at a time, and we often see that there has been an opportunity for the agency that is being evaluated to say, yes, we would appreciate being able to do this, or we agree with the recommendation, and here are the steps that we have taken to implement these recommendations. And I'm having a hard time finding those that kind of response, or indeed if there is a response to the recommendations that would be, we don't find these necessary, or we don't agree with the recommendations. In a first reading of the response from the department, I was finding a hard time finding it difficult to relate to your list of recommendations. And so I'm asking you, Ms. Thiessen, if you would, is it Thiessen or Tyson?
Tyson.
Tyson, Ms. Tyson, Mr. Chairman, in going through these 9 recommendations, which of them did you find the Department of Education and the Commissioner responding favorably to, or endorsing, even if you mentioned one with regard to additional legislation with investigative authority and so forth, but which of these did you find the department responding favorably to, and which did you find that there was pushback to these 9 recommendations?
Director Tyson. Or Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Rest. I appreciate that question. You're correct that they don't directly map, and of course the commissioner's here, and I hope you ask him that question as well. I think that there's some glimmers in the response. So for example, the establishment of the Office of Inspector General, I guess my hope is that means they're going to, look at their complaint investigation procedures and then look at our recommendation related to revising their complaint investigation procedures. And, hopefully that's a roadmap for the OIG of, here are some, we think, kind of low-hanging fruit of things that should be done. Similarly, they have an outside financial review of sponsors and their risk management and audit personnel. My hope is that those efforts then look at these recommendations and take them into consideration and act upon them. So there's a little bit of inference, perhaps, that has to be done to map what they say in their letter to our recommendations, but I do think that there's opportunities there.
Senator Rest.
Mr. Chairman, but Ms. Randall, that really wasn't my question. My question was, there are 9 recommendations here. Which of them were endorsed, whether they have been implemented or not? Which of them were endorsed by the MDE Commissioner?
Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Rest, for the clarification. I don't see an endorsement of any of them.
Senator Rest, I think they're going to be up next, so.
Mr. Chairman, that's extremely disappointing, of course. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Anderson, quickly, and then.
I'll be quick. I have a question. I know you can't comment on whether there's any criminal investigation going on within the department. But were there monthly reports that were given to, by the staff to the commissioner, the assistant commissioner, about who was the dollars amount, the number of meals? Did you find anything like that? And then my other question is, did you review emails amongst the department head and the staff, or was that not part of your investigation?
Director Tyson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Anderson, we really focused on just kind of the day-to-day oversight. We were not, or as part of the scope of this special review, we're not looking at the kind of internal communication between the agency leader, so we didn't seek that type of information.
Thank you.
Senator Dibble has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question kind of picks up on Representative Greenman and Senator Rest's questions. We've heard the discussion of the newly installed Office of Inspector General at the Department of Education, as well as bringing on General Counsel, both positive developments over at the Department of Education. There's been some other steps that have been taken recently. We have the Office of Grants Management over at admin, and kind of flowing from that, some stronger standards around the oversight and management of managing grants and the like, kind of enterprise-wide, multiple agencies. Commissioners can now cancel a grant with some authority. Of course, we have the subpoena authority also over the Department of Education. And some stronger measures that prohibit the retaliation or interference with, those who are shedding light on issues of malfeasance, nonfeasance, or misfeasance. I'm going to ask the agency the same question. Which of these tools, which of these new policies and tools and resources do we think will help with these kinds of situations going forward?
Auditor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Dibble, and I appreciate that question. I do think the changes that the legislature made this past session to give the OIG at the Department of Education more authority and specific authority is a necessary step. It's not sufficient, but it was a necessary step. Similarly, I think the kind of beefed up grants management requirements that you all put in law in 23, I think, also were necessary but not sufficient. And one thing that struck me with looking at this special review is that the Department of Education had all the authority it needed in the federal regs. It's just that they didn't use all the authority they had. And so, it was great that the legislature established the OIG in the Department of Education. Senator Cran and I are going to disagree, but that's okay. And it was, even better that you gave that OIG some real power to do things, to do its job. But if the department doesn't use it, if it doesn't use the authority it's given, then none of it matters. So again, I think those were good, necessary steps, but not sufficient.
Senator Dibble.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Before we go to the Department of Education, I'm looking through, and I think one of the things that's stunning is kind of the long rolling impact of what's happening here, that we've got several years. But I also remember, I think it was March 17th, 2020 is when we were essentially shutting down. And it appears to me what we may have here is either at best assertive, but maybe aggressive evil. That you had fraud occurring, and then in the midst of the crisis in April, a few weeks after, people saw an opportunity to ramp up the fraud. And you look at the dollars, and we were all dealing with a crisis. So people exploited, evil exploited this, Minnesota trying to help people. And they kept exploiting it. And there's almost like a reverse slap suit where at the point of the ramping up of the fraud, you had threatening of litigation. And then actually, kind of during the second bump of COVID in November, you actually had a lawsuit filed against the department. So, we hope that people are doing the right thing, but when you are dealing with evil, it's hard to swallow that. It's hard to recognize. And what you have here is you're taking money from kids on a massive scale. And we see this continuing to roll out. Our colleagues here on both sides of the aisle are concerned that, we've got 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. But when I look at that March, April through November of 21, which was kind of peak COVID, where we were trying on unprecedented times to deal with things, evil exploited that for their own gain, and we don't even know where the money's really gone. So it's important. We have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and we have the judicial branch. And we have the federal government. And all are continuing to play a role in this. And we probably will be, because this was unprecedented. The pandemic was unprecedented, but the exploitation of the pandemic for fraud is unprecedented anywhere in the country, what we had happen here. And it's hard to get our arms around that because it's so stunning. So this is a piece of the puzzle. I appreciate you doing that. And we'll hear next from the Department of Education. Commissioner Jett. Welcome, Commissioner. State your name for the record.
Mr. Chair, committee members, my name is Willie Jett, and I have the privilege to serve as the Commissioner of Education here in the state of Minnesota. I appreciate the opportunity to comment on the Office of the Legislative Auditor's special review of the Minnesota Department of Education's oversight of the nonprofit organization Feeding Our Future. With me here today is the Department of Education's General Counsel, Myron Holden. The situation with Feeding Our Future was a travesty, a coordinated, brazen abuse of a nutrition program meant to ensure access to healthy meals for low-income children. This was flagrant, coordinated fraud for which 5 people have been convicted and 70 total indicted. I would like to acknowledge the thorough and collaborative process undertaken by the OLA in reviewing MDE's oversight of federal nutrition programs, and we value the detailed attention given to our practices and approach such reviews as valuable tools for continuous improvement. Our agency is committed to maintaining program integrity and ensuring robust fiscal oversight of our programs, which serve children across the state. Importantly, our agency did not wait for this report to take action. We have proactively implemented changes over the past several years to enhance program oversight and integrity. This report set out to address two questions. First, to what extent do MDE's oversight of Feeding Our Future meet federal requirements? And second, what, if anything, could MDE have done differently? For the first question, we did meet federal requirements. And for the second question, we know there is opportunity to learn and to improve. This special review validates many of our own observations over the past 2 years as we sought to learn from this experience and build safeguards to prevent future issues. The level of fraud here was unprecedented. The Department of Education's team was quick to act, our oversight met applicable requirements, and we made an effective referral to law enforcement. MDE staff were diligent in enforcing program requirements and instrumental in bringing an end to the fraud. Let me share with you the series of events that occurred. By the summer of 2020, Feeding Our Future was operating both the summer food service program and the child and adult care food program. Upon receiving claims for that summer, we observed rapid growth in the number of existing sites and addition of new sites sponsored by Feeding Our Future, along with an exponential increase in meal reimbursement claims. In accordance with federal regulations, MDE staff repeatedly worked with Feeding Our Future representatives to understand the increased demand. As the OLA report notes, MDE made extensive findings about Feeding Our Future's shortcomings. Upon observing rapid growth, we sought advice from the USDA Midwest Regional Office multiple times and escalated our concerns to the USDA Office of the Inspector General in October 2020. After MDE raised concerns about the number of new sites and the unexplained increase in meal reimbursement claims, Feeding Our Future filed a lawsuit against MDE in November 2020. In December 2020, MDE stopped approving new summer food service program applications from Feeding Our Future and denied numerous site applications. In January 2021, MDE declared Feeding Our Future seriously deficient due to incomplete financial audits and a lapsed nonprofit status with the IRS. Again, in spring of 2021, MDE declared Feeding Our Future deficient for nonconformance with USDA performance standards and denied numerous site applications. We issued a stop pay order to halt all payments to Feeding Our Future, giving us time to verify the validity of meal claim reimbursements. MDE also reported concerns to the FBI, maintaining regular contact with the FBI and later the Attorney General's office. Throughout the FBI raids and the U.S. Attorney's announcements of criminal indictments. On April 21st, 2021, a judge warned MDE that it did not have the authority to stop payment to Feeding Our Future and would need to continue to pay Feeding Our Future's claims or face possible contempt charges. MDE was then found in contempt of court and assessed fines and fees of over $40,000 for having attempted to improve oversight that the court found MDE did not have. That summer and fall, Feeding Our Future continued to file motions for additional injunctions and orders of contempt challenging MDE's authority to oversee the programs, meanwhile continuing to perpetuate in its massive fraud scheme. Despite continued legal challenges from Feeding Our Future, MDE remained committed to safeguarding program integrity. Our efforts, including reporting to federal law enforcement, led to 70 criminal indictments, with 18 individuals pleading guilty to charges such as wire fraud and other financial crimes. Last week, 5 individuals tried in federal court were found guilty on most charges. As a continuous improvement agency, the Department of Education has independently implemented several changes to strengthen our oversight capabilities, ensure program funds are used as intended, and root out fraud, waste, and abuse. These changes include establishing and subsequently expanding authorities for an Office of Inspector General at MDE, reporting directly to the Commissioner. establishing a general counsel at the agency in 2021, and building out the team over the past 3 years, updating our fraud reporting policy and training in the fall of 2022, securing funds from the legislature to support risk management and an additional auditor in the school finance division, contracting with the national firm, MH Miles, to conduct in-depth finance reviews of certain community nutrition sponsors, investing millions into our cyber-linked interactive child nutrition system, CLICS, technology system to provide updates and improvements, with an estimated completion date of December 31st of 2025, and further increasing MDE's oversight tools for the summer food service program and the child and adult care program during the 2023 legislative session. Within days of my appointment as commissioner in January 2023, I convened MDE leadership to understand what happened with Feeding Our Future, what we learned, and what safeguards we needed to implement. One of my first actions was to come before the House and Senate, sharing my approach oriented towards accountability and continuous improvement. The department has been intentional and focused on accountability, seeking agency-wide solutions, not just to address past mistakes, but to prevent future issues, ensuring program integrity and strong fiscal oversight. So I'd like to thank Auditor Randall and Catherine Tyson, Director of Special Reviews, for their team's work on this special review. The department looks forward to continuing to make changes outlined in the report to ensure Minnesota remains the best state in the country for children to grow up in. And as the commissioner, I remain committed to doing what's right by kids first and foremost. And so thank you, and I'm happy to take questions from the committee.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Commissioner. How many MDE personnel received disciplinary action for incompetency and oversight of these programs?
Commissioner Jett.
Nope, also the paperwork just got confused up. So one question. Give me 1 second there, okay. First question, current employee. Blame. And so with that being said, first and foremost, that's not who Willie Jett is as a person. It's not who I am as the Commissioner of Education, and that's not what MDE is about.
Mr. Chair?
Let the commissioner finish, and then.
Well, I was hoping the commissioner would actually answer the question, because part of the job of running an organization is actually making sure that you have competent people doing it. And one way to drive that is to actually discipline people that have the incompetence. And we don't have to have some diatribe about anything other than a number.
Representative Quam. Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, members, Representative Quam. Again, first and foremost, that is not who I am as a person. It's not who I am as the Commissioner of Education, and that's not what MD is about. As an educator of 30-some-odd years, I've always valued accountability, especially because I'm about a kid, so that accountability always comes and circles back to how it impacts young people. So what I want to say is, you're not going to hear me place blame. I will say that there are some things and some findings in the OLA report that are fair, and we're using this report as a tool to improve. But to say that we need to come here and place blame or highlight who misstepped, that's not right.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, you know, frankly, I'm appalled that they haven't taken any appropriate measures. Looking at the testimony and the report, there actually was flagging of issues with processes and procedures back in 2017. And then there were complaints starting in 2019, January of 2019. And I heard in the excuse, well, there was a court ruling. Well, November 20th, the court stated that despite federal regulations, MDE did not process applications within 30 days. If you've got fraud and you've got issues, you can reject an application within 30 days. Do your, that would be doing the due diligence required by the federal government, and you never would have had a lawsuit because there would have been no basis for you being delinquent in action. And, we're talking over a year of instances documented of bad behavior, which should easily justify denying questionable applications. Those, if it's denied, then they can do better documentation, address concerns, and reapply. But sitting and doing nothing, it's obvious is the reason why Ramsey County Court, ruled against you. And, I don't understand why, with all these years of issues documented, that years later, you still hadn't taken actions and waited for the federal government to do it. I asked to see if you actually internally disciplined the people that were, again, incompetent in oversight. And I can't use COVID as an excuse because it started a year before we did our shutdowns. And it started after we had documented issues with some of these same entities with other programs. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Quam, I gave you some discretion there to go, but we all know that we don't assign motives to each other, and we don't assign motives to the testifier. And I want the commissioner to answer as he has done before, but we all know better. We can ask the questions without the implication of intent, and I asked the auditor about intent earlier. So I think we had an answer. We're going to have another answer.
Mr. Chair, I did not
Representative
state
Quam,
intent, I stated incompetence. That is not intent. That has to do with actually not doing your job. So that is not intent.
Representative Quam, that's a judgment. Commissioner.
Mr. Chair and members, in terms of employment management decisions, those are part of the public record, and I can't comment on that, or I will not comment on that. But MDE just didn't allow fraud to happen. We noticed issues early on and took action. The MDE team used regulatory tools available to respond. The Department of Education reached out to our federal partners in a timely fashion and cooperated with their direction to not impede their investigation. I will now ask Ms. Holden to respond from a legal perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Maren Holden, and I serve as General Counsel for the Minnesota Department of Education. To your question, Representative Quam, when Partners in Nutrition and first initially applied to these programs, what MDE did was deny their first application. So as the commissioner laid out in his opening remarks, this really is a story of MDE exercising regulatory tools available to us at every turn. So in 2016, we denied Partner Nutrition's application because they were seeking to be a multi-site unaffiliated sponsor, which we didn't think that they had the financial viability to do that. They appealed to the available processes available to them, and ultimately it got to the Minnesota Court of Appeals, which determined that we were not able to use the financial viability criteria that was more stringent than the federal regulations to deny Partners in Nutrition's application. And that's when Partner in Nutrition became a part of the program. Similarly, when Feeding Our Future first applied to participate in these programs, we denied their application. and our denial of their application was reversed. And that kind of set the stage for their continued participation in the program. So to your question about kind of when did this start and MDE using regulatory options available to us, we've sought to use regulatory tools available to us at every turn. I could speak further to the 2020 litigation if you'd like, but I just wanted to address the early years.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my references were to the years prior, 2019, when you start having complaints and documentation and people coming forward. And,
Council Holden.
yeah.
Mr. Chair and Representative Quam, thank you. Again, as you see throughout OLA's findings, and with regard to the applications, we were identifying findings in every time that they applied. But this really gets back to something that I think that Auditor Randall said, which is that, and it's very, very certainly the case for this program, which is that the federal regulations here really call upon the state agency to start from a posture of technical assistance. So this is a revenue neutral program for participating nonprofits, and that means that most of the time it's like a child care association, a daycare, a school district that's wanting to serve healthy meals to the low-income children that they serve. And so then they sign up for the program, but there are a lot of requirements. The meal pattern is pretty involved. There are a lot of detailed requirements about making sure that the food it follows all of the regulations. And so one of the key roles of the state agency as part of the oversight is providing technical assistance and opportunities to correct. And so that's really how the posture of many of these regulations are structured. So in 2019, when we were identifying problems at the application stage, it was our role under the regulations to give opportunities for those to be corrected. Certainly there were complaints filed in 2019, and I can speak to the complaints too. Again, this is an area where our nutrition team are often nutritionists. They are program administrators. They are not investigators. We now have an investigatory team as we're setting up our Office of Inspector General. But many of the complaints, including the one that specifically in early 2019 that alleged that someone had taken the nonprofit status of FOF to use it, we knew that law enforcement was involved, and so we understood that law enforcement would be handling that and investigating that, and they have more tools for that than our nutrition program staff do. Certainly the complaints throughout the years, we handled them according to our written procedures, which were reviewed by the USDA during the management evaluations, and we received no findings on our written complaint procedures. I will say the OLA's recommendations about how we should improve our complaint procedures are excellent, and we really look forward to implementing them. Now that we've seen this incredibly coordinated brazen fraud scheme, yeah, we completely agree. We should implement those recommendations. But to the first question, as the commissioner said, about did we meet our federal requirements, our complaint procedure as written had been reviewed by the USDA, and we had received no findings about it.
Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. So you got a kind of a foretaste from when I asked the question previously, and it's very unfortunate that there's no way that we can go back and make things right with the children who didn't receive the meals. But what is your plan for restitution to the taxpayer?
Commissioner or council?
Mr. Chair, members, we've not been made aware of any intent by the federal government requiring pullback of funding.
Representative Jacob.
So are you implying that there's no restitution needed?
Mr. Chair, members, Representative Jacob, that's not the implication, or that's not what I'm implying. Just making sure that I state out loud, we've not been made aware of any intent by the federal government requiring pullback of funding. And I can.
Representative Jacob.
Well, the pullback of funding is much different than the loss of funds that have already occurred. My question wasn't what goes into the future. My question is restitution for the taxpayers who've been damaged. Does that come out of your department? Where's that coming from?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, members, that's a decision that comes from the DOJ, and I can turn this over to Ms. Holden.
Council Holden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Jacob. As I'm sure you're well aware, in order that the ongoing criminal proceedings is the main mechanism by which a determination would be made legally that the funds were not used appropriately, and then the federal government will have the ability to seek restitution at the conclusion of those proceedings. This again gets to our regulatory tools, which we requested validation, but we never had the tools to make a definitive finding. As Auditor Randall noted, fraud is a very specific intent crime. It has a specific definition. Our investigatory tools did not permit us to make that determination. That's why we sought assistance from federal law enforcement. And so that's now the process through which restitution will be determined.
Representative Jacob.
Well, did I hear you say out of that you don't feel your department is responsible for this, or you do feel responsible for this?
Commissioner Holden. Council Holden, sorry.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
Oh, Mr. Chair, members. And so again, you're not going to hear me place blame. And I will say that there are some findings in the OLA report that are fair. And we're using this report as a tool to improve. But to say, again, I'm going to say it one more time, to come here and place blame or highlight who misstepped, that's not right. That's just not what we're going to do.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Well, I think others will do that for you. I just want to start out and say, you weren't commissioner when this all happened. You came into a mess, and I would hope that you're using your time to clean it up, to clean up the department. As you know, I'm on some committees that you've testified in front of regarding the Inspector General. I am glad that we gave him subpoena authority this year, which I do want to point out that when we asked him if he had authority before we did it, he said no. And then it was the legislature that pushed that. It wasn't the department, okay? Because it absolutely was. We pushed that. And because we want someone within there to have the ability to actually do their job. Our goal is to clean this up, and I hope you as commissioner that's the way you look at your role, rather than defending practices, maybe some practices that occurred in the past, which are absolutely indefensible, completely indefensible. I understand, we talked about, the council talked about nutrition staff. There are line, nutrition folks, but these were political decisions made by people that ran those departments, or the assistant commissioner or the commissioners, commissioner who is gone, okay? These were political decisions that were made. These weren't the line item nutrition staff making decisions. And, that's, I think, what some people have talked about accountability, because there were decisions made which were very bad decisions, and led to hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud. I won't dispute, there were several times that this was brought to court by the MDE, but there was also clarification that actually you could, after the fact, you could stop it. Okay, so there was the judgment, and then there was clarification later. And the department had a responsibility to terminate sponsors. They had that absolute responsibility. by the USDA, and they didn't do it. So again, I don't want to, beat up Commissioner Jett because he wasn't there, and he came into a mess. And that's the fact. But I hope that it's cleaned up and that we're not defending bad practices, and that we take every line of the legislative auditor's recommendations and we implement them, because that needs to happen. Thank you.
Commissioner Jett.
So, Mr. Chair, members, Representative Anderson, the final language that passed for the OIG provides the proper authority needed, and our OIG did concur. And I want to thank the legislature for passing the education bill. And I'd also like to invite Ms. Holden to talk specifically how we strengthened the final OIG bill language. But before I get to that, just a moment to talk about the OIG progress, okay, and how's that been going. And so again, I'm just grateful for the legislature for establishing the Office of Inspector General at MDE. And we're working hard to make sure the office is up and running and set up for success. The office has been hiring staff this year to do the important work to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. And the office is also establishing policies and procedures for the work. And this is all being done based on the national best practices. And at this moment, I was going to turn it over to Ms. Holden.
Council Holden.
Mr. Chair, members, I'm not sure if more would be helpful. I'm sure Representative Anderson, you're very familiar with the OIG language that was passed, and as Commissioner said, we're just incredibly grateful to the legislature for passing that to create subpoena power, expand our data access, and create enforcement tools, including ones that, and this was an earlier discussion, that interact with actions that other agencies have taken with regard to actors. We think will really set our OIG up well to root out fraud, waste, and abuse, and be quick and responsive to ensure trust in public funds. So thank you again for passing that.
Senator Askowski, then Senator Cran, and then Senator Dibble. And then Senator Rest.
Mr. Chair, my battery's about dead. Maybe you can come back to me.
Maybe you don't have a charger. Senator Cran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Commissioner, we appreciate you coming before us today. And we know that you aren't here. But you can understand the frustration that the average citizen could have and say that, well, we did everything we could, but we did everything right, but $250 million at a minimum, we really don't know what the number is. That was the initial, based on the initial 50 people that were charged, yet to be convicted. But there's 70 people charged now, so we don't know what that number is. So it's likely more. $250 million is a large dollar amount. When you look at the questions we've had here today, we're a little troubled that we're not getting any answers. And that's frustrating, because what we would expect to say, yeah, you're dang right, this is horrible, and this is what I'm going to do, and I would hold everybody accountable. And all we've heard is, well, we wouldn't want to place blame on somebody. We do. Every single person there, including the agency, the commissioners, and everybody there, violated a state statute, criminal law, or a criminal statute that requires every single one of them, as a suspected fraud, should be notified to the OLA. And I've seen the report. Many agencies do that very well. But when you make the statements and you read off the highlights, and I just thought it was interesting in your report for the citizens, because most won't go out and read it, is that you really put it, said, I think what happened is feeding our future was a travesty, right? A coordinated brazen abuse of nutrition programs that exist to ensure access to healthy meals for low-income children. The responsibility for this flagrant fraud lies with the indicted and convicted fraudsters. That's one piece of accountability, right, of the failure. The other one was how the heck did it get to that level and the significant effort there? And so it was exclusively the role of the Department of Education to stop it. And all the failures and all the process were identified in early as 2018 as not having process and practice and those things in place. And then we rolled into the process of this expansion of nonprofits. And we're still trying to see what, I guess I'd like from you guys, I'm not sure you're going to have it on hand, but of all the dollars allocated to the program for the summer program in the schools, how much of that just if you know off the top of your head, I don't want you reading another report or find another email. But how much of that? Was 50% of it to these nonprofit entities? Was 30% of it to the nonprofit entities? Of total dollars. That's all I'm
Commissioner or
asking.
council? Council.
Mr. Chair and Senator Coran, I'll let the commissioner speak to the earlier parts of your question, but we don't have that on hand, but we'd be happy to follow up with you and get that.
Mr.
for you,
Chair.
Senator.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Cran.
you guys know what the hearing is about, right? This hearing is about fraud. And I was a former Department of Revenue person. I could tell you every business tax filing, everything, because it was my job to know that. There's nothing bigger, right? We talk about unprecedented. There's nothing bigger. Collectively, we got plenty of other abuse. But to not know that at the high level, I'm not asking for the penny, just aggregate amount. Just give me. You guys, it's your sole purpose in life, or one of them, and it's a sole purpose for a variety of people in your agencies, to manage these programs. They're vital and needed. It stole $250 million of resources from needy people. And so one would expect you to have a high dollar amount, some estimate, right off the top of your head. It's your job.
Senator Cran, the agencies have a duty of candor, and if their candor is that they don't have that number in front of them, they don't have that number in front of them.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Chair, and I want to make that.
Council Holden, response.
Mr. Chair and Senator Coran, we will gladly get that to you. It sounds like, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking for, a breakdown within these nutrition programs, specifically between the nonprofit participants as opposed to like governmental entity participants, like school districts and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Okay, yep, we will gladly get that for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Cran.
So with it, Commissioner, you said that, well, we met all the criteria, and I think I've heard just a whole host of excuses. On that you didn't have the or you didn't have the right tools. You did have the right tools. You said you denied applications. Then you threw in the lawsuits. And another unprecedented activity occurred around the lawsuit. So you're still carrying the company political line that you didn't have. The same thing the governor responded way back when it occurred, that the judge had to come out and make clear that he didn't stop you from, or he didn't stop you from enforcing or stopping those payments. And every step of the way, money continued to go out the door in the hundreds of millions. So for anybody to lay claim that we were highly successful and we led to this, there's just something wrong with that. And the average citizen has to look and say, as it rolls on to this and into the next excuse that, wow, this is unprecedented times and, we got waivers. We're not aware of anybody just stopping by. I'm aware of actually other private citizens and newspapers that stop by sites. We couldn't even do a physical site. So you got to understand the average taxpayer, and I think the first 7 of the lawsuits, or the first 7 that are being tried, one of the sites was a city park, serving thousands of meals a day. The next one was you got complaints from a business that said, hey, we're on this list. There's no tenant here. They still paid them, and it didn't stop anything. And so it went on and on and on and on for a very long time. And all while you violated state law, every single one of you, every single person in that agency, every single person at the department, the AG, and all of them violated state law to stop it, that would have stopped it upon the first acknowledgement of when Feeding Our Futures application was rejected or the information was terrible. All of those things could have stopped it. Nothing in the agency that you did actually stopped it. And from what I understand, and from what the report says, and I'll be glad to have the clarity from the OLA, is that it came from whistleblowers. It didn't come from the Department of Education, notify the FBI to begin the investigation. And so I would like that clarified for public record. You're still towing the line that you were notified, or you notified, Department of Education notified, which kicked off this process, which, by the way, was post-theft and still allowed for the theft of over $250 million. And so I would like the clarification of your position, and I'd like Auditor Randall to come up and provide the clarification, or whoever, Ms. Thiessen, to provide the clarity on the notification of the FBI, because I believe it's an exhibit in the report, to clarify that issue for our citizens in Minnesota.
Council Holden, and then Ms. Randall, if you would come forward. We have more members on the list. I don't really want to go past 2 hours on this hearing, so Council Holden.
Mr. Chair, Senator Coran, thank you for the question. Just stepping back a little bit before the moment that you're talking about. So as the commissioner outlined, in the summer of 2020, when the claims started coming in, we noticed right away, our team noticed right away that there was a rapid growth, and we didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to our team. So what our team started to do was reach out to the USDA Midwest Regional Office. Then starting in September of 2020, around later that fall, we actually started denying site applications or not allowing site IDs to be created to get created for an application. In October of 2020, we notified the USDA OIG, and throughout the regulations, that is one of our obligations, is when we have concerns about program integrity, which is what how I would characterize our concerns at that time, is to notify the USDA OIG. It was in November of 2020 that the litigation started, challenging our ability to decline to create site IDs, which prevented them from initiating new site applications. And that is, I mean, I don't know exactly who, but a few of you have spoken to the judge's order and the transcript from April of 2021. That was a hearing specifically about the site IDs, although Feeding Our Future also raised the stop payment during it. But you're correct that he didn't issue an order on the stop payment during that. He told us that if it were before him, how he would rule, but he didn't directly rule on it. And so then we, by January of 2021, when we hadn't gotten the audit that they had promised us in October of 2020, we issued the first serious deficiency and then started preparing for the second serious deficiency, which we initiated in March of 2021. But yes, we do not dispute the OLA's account about the February interaction with the FBI. It's my understanding, and again, I wasn't here during that time either, but that our team was eager to get their assistance at that point, because confirming or denying what FOF was telling us is an investigatory function that our team didn't have the ability to do at the time. And so we really did need their help. And so it was in April that we started working with them.
Mr. Chair, so maybe Ms. Randall doesn't have to come up here. Correct me, did you just say that you agree with the OLA as it relates to who notified the FBI? Or who notified who? Did you just clarify that you agree with the OLA findings and that the FBI notified the agency? Is that what you just said?
General Counsel Holden.
Mr. Chair, Senator Coran, I didn't speak to notification, and again, I wasn't here during that time, but I agree with their timeline that we had a meeting with the FBI in February of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So,
Senator Coran.
So the commissioner said in his prepared statement that they were the lead, they notified. So I guess I would like clarification from the agency's position, from legal. I know you weren't there. And then I'd like it from Ms. Randall and their findings.
So why don't we have Ms. Randall come up? And then why don't we answer the question? And then we'll move to the other testifiers. Move to the other members.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, again, Judy Randall, Legislative Auditor. And the timeline in Appendix A walks through some of this as well. But what I would say is in October or November of 2020, MDE notified USDA OIG. And then what we were told from the department and what we could see from documentation is that in February of 21, the FBI reached out to MDE. And that was the first time that MDE and FBI that we could identify spoke. And what we heard was that MDE viewed FBI reaching out as kind of proof that their reaching out to USDA OIG had worked. So it was like MDE reached out to USDA OIG, and then they thought USDA OIG reached out to FBI, who then reached out to MDE in February. All we can say is that MDE reached out to USDA OIG in late fall of 2020, and in February of 21, FBI reached out to MDE. then in April of '21, MDE and FBI meet and start to work together. Who notified who for that April meeting, we don't know.
Council Holden.
Mr. Chair and members, we don't have a dispute with that timeline. It's our position that we were seeking assistance from federal law enforcement and that we were working to build those relationships because we understood that we had a situation where we didn't have the tools to deal with the kinds of concerns that we were worried about, but that we didn't have proof of.
Senator Cran.
Mr. Chair, and so along that line, so the in the timeline, in that expansive, massive growth, I think Ms. Holden said that you reached out to the USDA, right? Because what the heck happened? What's going on? But the commissioner testified they reached out to USDA, and they wanted to work with their partner, Feeding Our Future. And the primary was Feeding Our Future. What's going on? What's this demand? Which was exponential. I mean, the red flags were so many, they had to be blinding. And yet, $250 million went out the door. And so a simple question was, Commissioner, did anybody take a basic site visit, right? We know they had desk audits, but did anybody do a basic site visit for the dozens of sites that don't appear to exist and yet were paid by the Department of Education with no verification? And COVID was not the reason or the excuse, because they could have safely masked up. They were all mandated to be vaccinated and masked in their state car. They could have went there and sat in a parking lot if there was a parking lot that existed. So did anybody do a drive-through? In your work investigation, I know you're new here, did anybody do drive-bys to do basic oversight? And that's what the average person says. How did that not happen?
Commissioner
And
Jett.
what will you do to make sure you bring comfort that it will happen?
Mr. Chair, Senator Karan, MDE, again, I'm going to say it again, MDE didn't just allow fraud to happen. We noticed issues early on and took the action. And our MDE team used the regulatory tools available to respond. And we reached out to our federal partners in a timely fashion, and I've said this again, and we cooperated with the direction to not impede the investigation. I want to, and you said this, Representative Anderson has said this, I understand you know that. I want to be clear, neither I nor Ms. Holden were there during this time. And it would not be appropriate for me to speculate on why certain decisions were made when we were not involved in these decisions. Ms. Holden.
Council Holden.
Mr. Chair, Senator Karan, site visits are a really important tool, and the obligation to do them was waived during COVID. Here's what we were doing was using tools available to us, and we, without site visits, noticed problems with the rapid growth. Another note about this time is that some of the other COVID waivers involved allowing things like meal bundling, giving multiple meals to multiple children within one family, giving meals to adults rather than the child themselves, whereas normally the meal has to be given one child, one meal on site, consumed on site. And so site visits wouldn't have been as useful of a tool necessarily, given the layers of fraud here. Because, for example, if we had done a drive-by on a Tuesday and said, wait a minute, you say that you're feeding, 550 children on a Tuesday, they could have come back and said, we did that at 3 a.m. We did that yesterday. We gave out a bunch of meals at 10 o'clock. Shoot, you just missed it. And so in that regard, the reviews that we were doing of the documentation and of the numbers gave us the information that we needed to know that we needed to alert the USDA OIG nearly as soon as those claims started coming in, to start denying new site applications in the fall of 2020, which they did ultimately sue us about. Another example of that kind of layering is that once we initiated the second series deficiency in March of 2021, we instituted a meal validation process that they vehemently challenged during the April court hearing, where we required, before a meal would be paid in our system, that they provide attendance records, the names, the meal pattern, invoices for the vendors, and that sort of thing. And we really, given our concerns about program integrity, thought that would be a very helpful measure. As it turned out, and as we just saw during the criminal trials, they were brazenly making up all of that information. And again, we are an agency, we didn't have investigatory tools, and so when our regulated entities provide us with documentation like that, with that level of detail, we don't have tools to dig underneath as to whether or not it's been falsified, and that's why we reached out to law enforcement.
Thank you. We're going to go Senator Dibble, Senator Rest, and then Senator Drazkowski, and I'm going to adjourn at 3:15. Senator Dibble.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as promised, I'm going to ask the same question of the agency as I asked of Auditor Randall, maybe a little bit different. So I think, so we have two things going on here, of course, looking back at what happened and, trying to gain some measure of understanding and some measure of accountability. I think that's very important. And, I think that is a continuing conversation of great interest to the public, and I would love to hear more about that. But what I want to ask about is prospectively, and some of this was touched on in some of the responses, as well as the formal response from Commissioner Jett, but I want to just ask again. Because I think what the public who's listening in, who's going to follow this in the media subsequent to this hearing, wants to hear is that this will not happen again, that this cannot happen again. We can't have $250 million fly out the door into people's pockets to ingratiate and enrich them in the kind of fraud that you see in third world countries. I mean, it's just, as was put earlier by, I think, Senator Cran, literally stealing the food out of needy people's mouths. I mean, it is appalling, shocking, and outrageous. And my question, of course, is, do we now have the knowledge, the experience, the training, the change in culture, and the tools to make sure that this doesn't happen again? We've instituted, the legislature has responded by authorizing and funding the OIG at the Department of Education. We now have, of course, general counsel at the Department of Education, investigatory powers, including subpoena. We strengthened, and I'm interested in hearing more about what your relationship is with the Office of Grants Management over at the Department of Administration, as well as the overarching enterprise-wide tools we have, policy authority to better manage grants, to stop grants when it's shown that the expenditure of public funds is not in the public's interest, the ability to exercise better due diligence in evaluating possible grant recipients, also some prohibitions on interfering with and retaliating against those who bring claims brought forward. And specifically, I want an answer to this question. Will the Department of Education fulfill its statutory obligation to alert the Office of the Legislative Auditor when it is aware of or suspects fraud is happening with grant recipients at the agency? Thank you.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Senator Dibble. Department of Education, just to address the question, the Department of Education is trustworthy because we're working and we're taking accountability and making changes. And we do value doing what's right by kids and by our taxpayers. We are and will continue to improve our practices, and we appreciate the OLA reports, and we'll implement their suggestions. And we've also done a lot of things, and I know we've mentioned many of them, and such as, I'll just list a couple, establishing the Office of the Inspector General, our General Counsel, things of that nature. But one of the things as an educator that I wanted to get to in terms of addressing the members, what we've learned. And as an educator, as we learn, we do better. And I say it again, I appreciate the OLA's thoughtful review to help us improve. And we always welcome this. I've learned the ways that MDE can strengthen and expand the tools we have to protect taxpayers' dollars. And I've learned that the team that I have at MDE, I just have the privilege of working with them at the department, is that they're focused on better serving students. In terms of what I have done, and I'll just reiterate it, within days of my appointment as commissioner in January, I convened that members of the MDE leadership team to help me understand what happened. what happened with Feeding Our Future, what MDE learned, and what we needed to do to ensure it has appropriate safeguards in place. And again, I'm not going to belabor that, but I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Holden at this time.
Council Holden.
Chair Hansen, Senator Dibble, to your final part of your question.
I was about to say that. The last part,
Sure.
Mr. Chair, members, that last part of your question, the answer is yes.
Council Holden.
Mr. Chair, Senator Dibble, I think the commissioner answered it all, but just as an example, I think one of the added features of having an Office of General Counsel for the agency is that there is a centralized unit where responsible for ultimate compliance, responsible for training, responsible for ensuring that our employees both understand and are capable and have the tools that they need to fulfill all of their regulatory responsibilities. And that has been, I think, the opportunity to work very well with also a new addition of the Office Inspector General. And Commissioner has just shown tremendous leadership in making sure that the team can work together well and that we are able to make these kinds of changes, not just for our nutrition program, but really agency-wide. And that's why we can say with confidence that we are in compliance and will continue to be with the obligation to report suspected fraud to OLA.
Senator Dibble.
Just also I had another fairly specific question, which is what does the Department of Education see as its connection and relationship to the Office of Grants Management at the Department of Administration and all of the reforms that we've instituted around, the due diligence, the oversight, and the management of grants through a lot of the policy changes, as well as some of the resources and support that are available through that avenue.
Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, members, Ms. Holden?
Council Holden.
Mr. Chair and Senator Dibble, we work really closely with the Office of Grants Management, and we're really grateful for and looking forward to continuing to work with the additional parameters put in place by the legislature for grants management. We are also underway having a project with an IT upgrade for our grants oversight software, which is really going to give us a lot. That's not in any of the documents, but it's going to give us a lot of additional tools. And I think that in addition to the additional parameters and our partnership with OGM will set us up well.
Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have particular questions, but I do have a couple of comments. Unfortunately, we do not have the MDE commissioners before us to respond to Representative Anderson, Representative Jacobs, Senator Coran, Representative Quam's questions and criticisms. Those commissioners had the authority, as was pointed out in this report by the legislative auditor, and they clearly did not exercise it to discover and to report fraud. We do not hear of programs, similar programs, using federal money to feed students in other states that experienced such fraud. We have not yet heard that the current department endorses those 9 recommendations, although it seems that they are, by their testimony here today, that they are eager to do the right thing. But what we really do have is the buck is still running down the street and stopping nowhere. And that is unacceptable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have attempted to reach Senator Drazkowski. It appears his battery is not charged.
Fully charged and ready for duty, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you. I recovered. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Jett and Ms. Holden. And as others have, I acknowledge that you guys are new on the block compared to, the time frame we're talking about here. But the people of Minnesota want accountability. And the message I'm hearing from each of you is, well, we will do better and we will bring, and I heard Commissioner Jett use the word accountability in the future. I don't know how anybody in this state, Commissioner, could believe you when you say you're going to bring accountability, when indeed the actions of the agency, again, it's not you, but maybe it's time for you to bring that accountability for past behavior so the people of Minnesota can believe you going forward in the future. But I would have a quick question, actually two questions, and that is, we heard from Ms. Tyson about invoices being put forward for 2,000 kids when there were 1,000 kids that were substantiated in the invoice, yet the department paid for 2,000 kids and wrote the check for 2,000 kids. Commissioner Jett, is that fair or right? And Ms. Holden, is it legal?
Commissioner or Council?
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, I think what Ms. Tyson was referring to was that period of time when we had required meal validation for meal claims that were coming in, which Feeding Our Future challenged in court. It's my understanding that our team did their best to review those for alignment, but I can't speak to whether or not that was done perfectly or whether, things like the 1,000, 2,000, I don't have specific knowledge of that. Whether or not it's legal is an interesting question. Feeding Our Future and MDE were having a very tough legal dispute at the time about how different federal regulations interplayed and interacted with regard to whether nonprofits were taking illegal action and what could be done about that in terms of withholding payment. And that's where the judge ultimately indicated that if a motion were to be brought in that regard, that he would be likely to agree with Feeding Our Future.
Well, Mr. Chair and Ms.
Senator
Holden.
Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Holden. Well, I find that ironic, given the fact that the actual contract signed by the department to obtain the federal funds contained and referenced the federal statutes that require your department to do the investigations to prevent fraud at every angle according to federal law. So not only it was their state law that was violated, likely by your department, but federal law as well. Ms. Holden, Commissioner Jett, you might not have this before you right now either, but it was reported 15 people oversaw this program within your department. Can we get a list, can our committee get a list of the 15 people, who they are, what their positions are, and which of them received training that included the consequences, because I've seen some of the training materials from MMB, the consequences that are in place for staff, including reprimand, dismissal, and jail. Can you share with us which levels and instances of training happened for those 15 individuals and the timeline for each?
Council Holden?
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, the 2022 updated fraud training was actually agency-wide. That occurred for all of our employees. As the commissioners already said, we can't speak to specific personnel information with regard to discipline or anything along those lines, but the fraud trainings that we started in 2022 are truly agency-wide.
Well, Mr. Chair, Ms. Holden, I'd like to get a list of the individuals that were responsible for the program, the 15 individuals, and when they received the training and the circumstances around that training. That's not the information that you mentioned is prohibited.
Council Holden?
Mr. Chair, Senator Drazkowski, we'd be happy to have follow-up conversations about this. We'll have to look into, what we can provide and what information that we have. But we'll
Mr. Chair, I would ask that the agency prepare a list for the commission.
Senator Drazkowski, I think we have the commitment from the agency to follow up with the information that they are legally able to provide. We are adjourned.